Hey Untold Radio Network fans, want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to have you all with us. I'm looking really forward to tonight's episode. We'll be looking at a weird video, which we kind of promised last week. But first, we're going to be talking about the recent congressional UFO hearings. And what's going to be fun about this is I know Jason has some insight, but he hasn't told me what his is. And I know I have some fairly significant insight, as I'm sure his is as well. But neither of us have any idea of the other's takeaway, which is always the most fun because then sometimes we butt heads. So watch us tonight as we dissect the recent congressional UFO hearings, only on Mysterious Library.
Good evening and welcome to another Mysterious Library. Dean, don't think I didn't catch that. You have some significant observations, and I'm sure Jason does as well.
Well, I mean, I can be a little egotistical, and I always think my insight's wonderful, but it might be total nonsense. Yours is probably equally insightful. Everybody has.
You can't dig your way out of this. I'm not letting you out of that easy.
No, yeah, I can be conceited sometimes. This is a conceited secret I shouldn't tell people because it makes me feel really bad. But we're going to have fun tonight, so I will.
Oh, it is.
I used to be an opinion writer in Sydney. I got paid a lot of money to write opinions pieces, like just nonsense, just my own little ideas, right? But so people say everybody's opinions equal. No, but some of us get paid big money for our opinions.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I used to. I don't get paid a diddly squat almost for my opinions anymore. But
so your opinions are back to being zero.
That's true. I got to get back. I got to get back in the fold of opinion writing. Money's fallen out of print though, man. When I used to write for print in Australia, like the Australian Spectator, People magazine, I wrote for a number of them. It paid so well. You could work one night and that'd be your work for the entire week. Like I go, okay, I need some money. I'll pitch a piece. I'll write a piece. Okay, I don't have to do anything for 7 days. I stayed up overnight, wrote for 12 hours, done. Those days are gone, man. That was good living.
Yeah, those days are gone. But now you can just spend a couple hours on Chat GPT and have an entire website worth of material.
Now everybody really does.
No, 100%. That's what's happening. Like, it's not even funny anymore. It is what it is. Anyway, it's going to be a great a great show tonight. Yes, the video that y'all were asking us about, the woman on the plane, and it was actually here in Dallas. I managed to track down the original video, not somebody else's commentary on it. The original video. So we're going to play that without the sound for obvious reasons, but I got some blow-ups of it so we can actually talk about it properly just for y'all. But that's going to be at the end. First, we need to talk about the UAP situation. However, before we talk about the UAP situation, we do have one other thing to discuss, which is the SasquatchCon or the SquatchCon virtual convention that's coming up here shortly, and it's going to be great. You can watch it. You can watch it there, be there virtually, or you can be there in person. But let's go ahead and play the ad for it.
Are you ready to uncover the mysteries of Bigfoot? Join us for SquatchCon Idaho 2023. This year, we're bringing the magic directly to your screen, or join us in person. Witness the world premiere of the enhanced Paul Freeman Bigfoot footage. Doug Hychek discovered a secret within this enhanced video you'll have to see to believe. Hear from an all-star panel of Bigfoot experts like Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, Cliff Barackman, Brian King-Sharp, and Michael Freeman. But that's not all. Get exclusive online bonuses such as Bigfoot-themed wallpapers, a Bigfoot coloring book, an interactive Bigfoot quiz, Squatch Nut Field Guide, get a copy of the Freeman Bigfoot Files ebook, and more. Whether you attend in person or watch it live online, you'll be part of an unforgettable experience. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Secure your spot today. SquatchCon Idaho 2023. Step into the unknown.
So there you go, SquatchCon, and it's coming up in just a couple of weeks. So you know, if you're in or near Idaho, go see it live. But if you're not, virtual. They've got a coloring book. How does it get any better than that? And like I said last week, I happen to know what it is Doug Hychek found. You really want to, you know who's really going to want to hear it? That guy over there.
Yeah, I'm out of the Bigfoot.
In the hat.
You guys just totally leave me out of it, you and Doug. Just in the dark.
Well, maybe. I'm just thinking, if you paid a little bit more attention every once in a while, you'd know what I was talking about. But you don't.
Well, you know me in the Bigfoot world. I kind of watch from the far sidelines.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. But,
I know.
You know, speaking of the Bigfoot world, though, I almost forgot to do this hot off the presses, and I didn't download the art, but maybe you have it sitting on your computer. And that is Bigfoot Michigan Rob's new book dropped, True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1. And I believe you did the artwork for that, Jason.
I did. It's just the cover. But yeah, I also did a little light editing, and a few other things. But it helped him with the setup of it, and I just realized I don't know that I still have it on this particular computer, because you're right, I had all of them on this computer, but because I set it up, but I think I may have literally deleted it off this morning because I didn't need it.
People can go find it on Amazon though, right? Like just look for Bigfoot Michigan Rob. Is that what?
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. And the problem is I don't have the JPEGs on this one. I had the PDFs, so I can't pop them up there. So.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save it and upload it. And if you remind me at the end, we can flash it up on.
Okay. Yeah, but no, it is, like I said, I had the opportunity to help, format it and do, again, very, very, very light editing. You don't want me editing anything. I'm terrible with grammar. So I just kind of did the helped with the grammar check and formatting and all that. But yeah, it's a really interesting book, and it's all from the stories that he's collected over the years. And they're all eyewitness accounts of not just Bigfoot, but yeah, there it is. Bigfoot, Dogman. What's funny is that's not even the original. That's not even the final back cover, because I forgot to leave space for the ISBN. So, but that is actually my favorite version of the back cover. But they needed a place for the barcode, so I had to. And it's very weird the way it looks. I probably trying to get that thing uploaded and formatted. My wife was laughing because I'd start screaming, "Son of a!" and I just get up and walk and go to the other room where my other PC is, so I can do the artwork, and I'd rearrange something. I'd come back, and then do it again, and she just kept laughing at me. But yeah, no, it's a great book. It really is. Definitely worth worth picking up. But it's live now. You can get it in paperback or Kindle edition.
No, I'm going to get a copy myself. I need to have Rob back on the show to talk about it, because I had him on a couple months ago. He was a great guest. I really enjoyed chatting to him.
No,
I'm
great
talking
guy.
weird when I say the show, because we don't really have guests, very rarely anyway, on Mysterious Library. I know one of our regular listeners is actually Horace Smith, who's the emeritus professor of astronomy and physics at Michigan State University. His new book on Lovecraft and astronomy is about to drop as well. But when that does, we'll do a fresh off the presses. Then I'll also have him on Talking Weird to chat about it. So that'll be great. Anyway, people are probably wanting us to talk about the UFO hearings or UAP hearings. Or
100%.
The whole UAP thing's kind of weird, just quickly, too. You know how it used to be? What did it used to be? It used to be unknown aerial phenomenon, which kind of made sense. And then they changed it to unknown anomalous phenomenon. But that's everything.
Yes.
Bigfoot's an unknown anomalous phenomenon. Is this like segueing us up so we're going to have a department of the government looking into ghosts and Bigfoot and Blessed Virgin Marys and everything else?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. They may already have one. But that being said, the main reason for it, though, was because they were like, people started saying, hey, what about USOs, right?
Right.
The submersible events. Because one things that a lot of UFO researchers have pointed out for a long time is it does appear as if these craft will just leave the water, and they're very, or they even dive into the water and move underwater. I've seen something off of the coast of Mexico that I can't explain.
Jason, what happens in Mexico stays in Mexico. Remember that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't about to talk about that time with the goat or anything, but we were just sitting on, we were out in Cozumel and, smoking cigars, and it was probably like 200 yards off, right? So it's, if you know Cozumel, like it's the area right around the island is, the water's relatively shallow, crystal clear, right? But you go far enough and it's a sheer drop. Well, it's out there, and there is this bright light just very slowly moving across, and we're all watching this and like, what are we, what's happening here? I mean, that's it. That's the end of the story. I mean, but the simple fact of the matter is, a lot of people, that's one of the reasons that they, at least the official reasons they claim to move it to anomalous, was they don't want it to be just aerial, because these things are also seen underwater.
Right. But by definition, it's any phenomenon which is anomalous and unknown.
And I think that's
the entire works of Charles Sport. You know what I mean?
No, you're not wrong. No, you're not wrong. In fact, I that was sort of my thought when they changed it from UFO to, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or aerial phenomena. Why'd they go with phenomenon? Because that's their hint. I think that's a hint that they're not, again, I think they were already forecasting this ain't going to be about craft. Not really. Not the way we've traditionally nuts and bolts to this thing. And considering how often the interdimensional aspect popped up during this hearing, and the fact that we're seeing it with the MUFON thing, I think that's really good. That's, again, tipping my hand here a little bit. That's definitely becoming a big aspect of the public discussion, is interdimensionality, and maybe moving beyond the idea of just nuts and bolts craft, but something else entirely.
Yeah, Grush likes to use non-human rather than to keep the optics open, or whatever he says. And he also threw that multi-dimensional theory out there about a higher dimensional reality projecting onto a lower dimensional reality, which sounds very much like Neoplatonic ideas of the order of forms and Gnosticism and all of these type of ideas, which we've talked about, I mean, ad nauseum on this show, really. But anyway, I'll let you tell me the things that you thought were the standout about the hearings. Well, I'm assuming everybody's watched them. If you haven't, they're worth watching, because they're about 2 hours. You can find it on YouTube. Super easy to find. Just put in UFO hearing. But I think I presume Jason and I are going to hit the highlights tonight anyway, or what we think of the highlights.
Well, at least what we think are the highlights, right?
Which will be very different to some UFO programs' highlights, by the way. Like, my highlight is probably not even going, I'm unaware of it having been talked about yet anyway. It probably has been. It's not like I'm watching every UFO podcast.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody in the community would be focusing on it. Let's put it that way.
Well, the thing that I'm the most interested in, I guarantee you almost no one is talking about. However, I do some of the highlights, overall highlights, before the things I wanted to talk about. Obviously, I do want to talk a little bit about the weasel words, right? That Grush kept using. Everyone kept saying, "Oh, see, he's talking about the aliens." Whoa, 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 whoa! He never once said anything about aliens, and he actually never called them pilots.
Well, he changed too, don't forget. Whenever anybody said
Uh-huh.
extraterrestrial, he'd say, no, I prefer non-human intelligence because
Yeah.
then we're keeping our optics open, or whatever the
Yeah,
terminology was.
yeah, he was very, again, I mean, I want to get more into that later on, but yeah, like that was the first time, like, he's using, and it's not just the kind of weasel words you would use if you're just trying to keep from being, flagged for revealing top secret information. He's using very specific language, dangerously specific. And even though people are saying, but in the context of the conversation, you're right. But here's the thing, and you're in a room full of lawyers, I guarantee you this is not lost on them, that he corrected. He never said they're not, he never, when they said, "Oh, you mean the pilots?" He never said they were pilots, ever. He just said that they've collected biologics. But so I want to come back to that. But obviously the weasel words were abundant in a lot of this testimony. That UFOs are dangerous to humans, that people have been harmed and killed by the government to keep the info hidden. Those were big things that we can probably talk about later. The funds illegally allocated specifically to Boeing from bills that were designed to do something else. I think that's honestly, I think that is going to end up being the core of what I'm going to talk about of my takeaways, because there is a huge undercurrent in this conversation that was happening and the hearings that everyone's missing. There is I think because everyone's focused on the UFOs, aliens, there's what everyone wants to have been said. I'm like, y'all are missing something pretty obvious here. And it's, if you're not really into politics, you may miss it, but it's all over. And I think the funds being illegally allocated to Boeing, which he calls out specifically, is a big aspect of it. You pointed out the Knapp and Corbell were right there, right behind Grush. Mm-hmm. And the words you used when we were talking was, initially was, you said, they might as well have just put Lazar there. Like, this was the day it was.
And can I just say quickly,
Yeah,
I hadn't seen all I'd seen then was a photo, and the only people I could see in that row, because they were on either side of Grush on the photo, was Corbell and was Knapp, right? And you're right about me saying, well, what's this all about? This is just like saying, Lazar's right, because these are the people who've pushed that. Knapp's the guys pushed Skinwalker. But I hadn't seen the whole back row sitting before them until I watched days later. And then my jaw just dropped. So my main takeaway is the people sitting behind, including who you just said, including Corbell and including Knapp, but two other people who were even more important sitting directly behind, that I guarantee 95% of the audience wouldn't even have thought who they were. And I'd be surprised if, other than Corbell and Knapp being pointed out, but I'm guessing most UFO podcasts would, because they'd know instantly who these people were.
Oh, yeah.
I think the other two people sitting behind were even more significant. And I don't know, and I'll get to it in my bit, but I don't know if it was if it was intentional for a message to be being sent beyond just your average member of the viewing public, or what the purpose was. But you don't have, there's a reason those four people were front and center, including Corbell and Knapp. There was some messaging being delivered. And I'm not talking conspiratorially. I mean, when they're the main people behind your star witnesses, and the star witnesses are significant as well, but we'll get to that in a minute. The whistleblower and the two people they choose to sit next to him on either side. So there were things happening with, to use, I think, even a term that Grush himself used, to do with optics. There was something happening there, very intentional, and I think there was a surface optics, and I think there was a deeper optics, and I think there's more to take away from that than almost anything said. But I'll get to that when I hit it anyway, if you want me to. Yeah.
The other main takeaways, again, information being deliberately withheld from Congress, which I think ties into the funds illegally allocated. He implies Majestic 12. And, Grush does. Anyone who knows anything about this knows that he was implying that. Gates requesting that Grush be interviewed in a skiff, I think, was really interesting, for obvious reasons. But it was and again, this sort of unifies my whole thought. Mr. Moskowitz, at the beginning, he talks about this. First of all, he talks about the stealth helicopters that I remember growing up, right? if you thought that there were stealth helicopters, right, you were a nut job. And then here we are. We killed bin Laden with one, or actually, there's two of them, right? It is. It's one of those things where you have. He comes out and just says it, and I think he does mention like, "Hey, these used to be conspiracy theory. These super secret, these ultra quiet stealth helicopters." But he uses a very interesting phrase. I reran it back a couple times to make certain I got it exactly. He talked about the unsanctioned weapons development. And so I might as well go into my main observations about this, and then we can talk about yours, because yours is going to go way more, I think, into the UFO culture aspect of it.
Maybe not, but still in a different direction. I think we're both going to take away things different to what the rest of the UFO community will, which is fun, to be honest.
Oh, no, absolutely. My thing is this. During, back in the good old days of the Cold War, and then after, and even during the early days of the War on Terror, Congress traditionally always bowed its head to the intelligence apparatus, right? You can call it the deep state, you can call it the unofficial government, the unelected government is the intelligence group. It's not just the intelligence agencies themselves. There's others, sort of, the permanent class that's there. Congress has always absolutely sort of whatever they want, right? And we can talk about why, but I think the simple fact of the matter is they've always said, okay, whatever they want to do is fine with us. This newer crop of congressmen and senators that are in office now, a lot, and again, this is, you know what? Only thing I'm ever going to the only good thing I'll probably ever say about AOC, right, is that you've got AOC and Matt Gaetz agreeing on this thing, because I think the one thing they both share is they both agree that Congress is supposed to have more power than it's had, right? There's been a lot of movement of political power from Congress to the presidency and then to the unofficial government, right? These intelligence agencies, etc. I think that this new crop are definitely wanting to actually maintain their power. They want to have the authority that they're supposed to have under the Constitution. So that's one thing they agree on, and it's like, hey, okay, I'll take this. What we are really seeing with a lot of this is an actual confrontation between the unofficial government, the intelligence agencies, and the official government. Because there's this thing that keeps popping up where they're saying, what do you mean there's stuff that we don't know? That is one thing that Grush talks about a couple times, but they keep coming back to is, what do you mean we don't know this? What do you mean this is kept from us? Gates talked about going and being denied access to things, right? And I think the real subtext of really all of this is Congress saying we have oversight. We're supposed to be the ones calling the shots. If we are not, then our government has been taken over by somebody else. Like this is, for me, the biggest takeaway was the fact that Congress is finally saying, whoa, hold up. This isn't right. You shouldn't have unsanctioned weapons development. You shouldn't be taking money from bills that we've passed to do something. You're taking them to do something entirely out of pocket that we know nothing about. That ain't gonna fly. What do you mean you can tell us no on things that we are supposed to have, that we're supposed to have knowledge of, right? They're like, yeah, we get some things are supposed to be, ultra super secret, squirrel top secret, but we're still supposed to be able to know about it so we can have oversight. You're telling me if we don't have oversight, then we don't have the control we're supposed to have. And that means we're not actually the ones in charge. That is my main takeaway, is that I think a bigger subtext, and maybe even one of the reasons, because I hate to be really, really cynical here in a second, I think there's another reason why the whole interdimensional thing is being pushed, but we can get, in a very cynical manner. We can talk about that in a little bit. But I think this is one of the reasons, though, is they're trying to separate the phenomena out, because the black government, the hidden government, the deep state is trying to hide itself again. And all of these black projects that they've had carte blanche to steal money from the American people and just kind of, and really do whatever they wanted with it. I'm certain some of it's really cool and maybe has really benefited us. But this new Congress doesn't want to play that game. They want to know what's happening and be able to say, yeah, this is worth investing money in. This isn't. And so I think that for me, that was my major takeaway is we're really starting to see this conflict between the official government and the unofficial government. And that's really why this is being dredged up.
You know what? One of the things I liked about the hearing is just what you were talking, the fact that there was conversation about who is meant to have the major governmental oversight. The Congress in this country are meant to be the people who make the laws, don't know what's going on. And that's ludicrous in any concept whatsoever. And the idea of the deep state hemorrhaging money on projects which nobody ever gives approval to and not having any oversight at all is also ludicrous. Of course, my suspicion is that the deep state, far from being about to be handed some type of, killer blow, I suspect somehow the deep state are behind these revelations. And this comes back to what I was talking about a minute ago when I was saying how my jaw hit the floor when I finally actually watched it and saw everybody who was sitting behind them. So I've took a little screen grab of the hearing there. So if we have a look at it and we'll go to the people at the desk. So left to right of the people at the desk who were the main witnesses, I suppose, before Congress. And one's Pilot Ryan Graves, who they always roll out regarding his experiences with UAPs. He's a constant person who's on the talk show circuit and has been for years. Of course, David Grush is in the middle, the whistleblower that we hear so much about. And by the way, he really looked like the cat who'd eaten the canary. Now I'm sounding like some shock jock, but it's true. He seemed like he was in his element and having a great time when I was watching. And next to him on the far right is Navy Commander David Fravor, who's most famous for being the person who is the major tic-tac witness. In fact, I think it was his gun camera which captured the tic-tac footage, right? So
it's his FLIR,
It's interesting that they've got the whistleblower in the middle, who is this person who's making fairly significant claims about recovered alien bodies and recovered alien crafts and back-engineered, secret UFO programs, and almost backing him up are two pretty, to be honest, for the most part, they seem like salt-of-the-earth military officers who seem to be telling me legitimate truths. So I have no idea whether what Grush is telling me is the truth or not. I certainly know that shortly after this hearing, and I'm not saying that I believe this individual any more than I actually believe Grush, but of course, the head of Arrow came out shortly afterwards, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, and wrote a private post on his LinkedIn statement, which then got confirmed to be a legitimate statement when it did the circuit, saying despite what Grush had said, he'd actually refused to talk to Arrow. And Arrow is the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is the office within the U.S. Secretary of Defense, which actually is the people who are given the job to investigate UFOs. So Grush comes out and says things about Arrow not talking, him talking to Arrow, yada, yada, yada. And Sean Kirkpatrick, who runs Arrow, says he's refused to talk to us. And he went on to say, in fact, what Grush is saying was insulting to all the good men and women of Arrow who are actually out there trying to get to the bottom of this story. So there's already clearly dissent within aspects of the intelligence services who are dealing with the UFO phenomenon. I'm not saying whether I believe Grush or Kirkpatrick or neither of them, but there's certainly already been some pushback. And perhaps you'd say, well, I imagine there would be pushback from there. But the point is, it's important to recognize that pushback. So anyway, back to what I think is my main takeaway, although I have other things to talk about. So we have Pilot Ryan Graves, we have David Grush, the whistleblower in the middle, and then we have the Commander David Fravor, who's best known for his tic-tac witnessing. And so that's put him front and center of the UFO story since 2017 when it broke in the New York Times. However, behind them, and so we just went screen left to right. Now we'll go right to left. The man in the green shirt holding his fingers kind of together, wearing the big gold watch. That is filmmaker Jeremy Corbell, who's known for his work in the UFO field, particularly the Bob Lazar documentary, which has been seen, I would imagine, by most people watching this show because it was a fairly big UFO doc, which pretty much brought Bob Lazar back front and center. Corbell went and did talk shows with Lazar next to him, for example, the Joe Rogan Experience, and it was Corbell's movie that brought Lazar back front and center. 2 over from him, so we'll go past quickly the man in the blue tie very quickly because we're about to come back to him, but that is George Knapp, who's one of the co-hosts of, or one of the hosts of Coast to Coast. I think he's a fascinating journalist. He's the person who first promoted the Bob Lazar story all the way back in the late 80s. He's probably the main popularizer of things like the Skinwalker Ranch story. So he's a fairly heavy hitter in the UFO realm. Both him and Corbell are major UFO journalists / filmmakers, and they're both there front and center on either side of the key whistleblower, Grush, right? Now, here's where it gets interesting, though. The man in the blue tie sitting between them is who initially was Grush's lawyer, and then his legal firm backed off and said they weren't involved anymore. That's the senior partner of the high-end legal group, Compass Rose Legal Group. And he was meant to be Grush's lawyer. I'm guessing he's still Grush's lawyer, even though the firm backed off and said they weren't involved anymore. But he used to be the Obama's appointed Intelligence Community Inspector General. So his name's Charles McCulloch III. He's a heavy hitter, in other words, in intelligence agencies and as far as in the whistleblower world, a heavy hitter. The person he answered to, his immediate boss when he was working for the Obama administration, is the person on the other side of Knapp. And do you know who that is?
No.
That's James Clapper, the director of national intelligence under Obama. Now, James Clapper, if there's a deep state... Right? Clapper is one of the key figures.
He's it.
It was Clapper and Comey and McCabe. So Comey, of course, was the director of the FBI. McCabe was the assistant director of the FBI, along with John Brennan, the CIA director, and, of course, James Clapper, who ran the whole Russian collusion disinfo narrative, or at least pushed it out. Now, nobody talks about this anymore. We're pretending it didn't happen, but we know now the Steele dossier was a fake. That was basically what set up the entire Russian collusion story. Who leaked the Steele dossier to CNN? The front man for CNN, the main guy for the whole CNN story.
Yeah,
It was Clapper. Clapper leaked it to Jake Tapper and sent Comey, essentially, because they had a meeting, to tell Trump that we have we have this dossier saying you're a Russian asset. And then as soon as Comey had that meeting, CNN were told the meeting were had, and then the news story was President-elect Donald Trump told about the Steele dossier. It was this massive, incredible setup to add more flame to the fire to show how much of a political operative Clapper may very well be. Clapper is one of the heads of intelligence agencies and ex-heads of intelligence agencies who signs the open letter. I can close this now, I guess. Who signs the open letter across multiple newspapers, if I recall at the time, saying the Hunter Biden laptop, that's just Russian disinfo. This is all BS. Clapper said that. Clapper also went on record multiple times saying Trump was probably a Russian agent. So we're looking at people there, Clapper and McCulloch, who were serious political appointees in the intelligence agencies of the time, serious, at least Clapper's serious deep state. And at this UFO hearing, behind the witnesses, who do we have? We have the 2 front men for Lazar, or the 2 main popularizers of the Lazar story in the media. So we have Knapp and we have Corbell, and sitting in between Knapp and Corbell is McCulloch, and sitting on the other side of Knapp is James Clapper. I mean, is this? And I don't think your average American looked at that and knew who any of them were. I think UFO people looked at it and knew who Corbell and Knapp were. But
I recognize Knapp. I recognize Knapp. I got Clapper and Knapp all together, but I wouldn't recognize James Clapper, right? So this is why I love you, because you recognize these people. Yeah, most people would not have seen that. But you're right. I think there's a real message there.
But something's being said there when you've got those people behind. And what is it? I don't know. But you couldn't. Nobody can just walk in and take those seats, right? Those seats are especially given to somebody, for people for whatever reason, right? And I think immediately behind the witness, I think there is a seat reserved for the witness's guest, because I noticed when you went one over to where Favor was, and there was an empty seat immediately, behind him, it said reserved for witness. So I'm guessing guessing you can put your lawyer there. And so I'm guessing immediately behind where Grush was, it said reserved for witness. I'm guessing that's why McCulloch was there. I don't know what the signage was on the other seats, if it was just reserved, like I could also see in empty seats, or if it was reserved for specific people at that table. I don't know. But I'm telling you what, you can't just wander in there and sit dead front and center at a hearing like this. There's no way.
You can't. No. Yeah, you're right. 100%. I'm here to tell you can't, right? I know people who, let's just say that. I don't mean that to be cryptic. I just don't want to, because of what we do, you don't necessarily want their names drug out here. But I mean, people in the military and Congress, friends of mine, I just happen to know them, no one too high up, but I know how those things work. And you're right. You can't just sit there. That's optics. Somebody chose that. Somebody chose them to be right there. So there is a message. The question is, what is that message? I kind of have my feeling as to what's going on, but the simple fact of the matter is that they aren't there by accident. The fact that I didn't recognize James Clapper, because I couldn't pick him out of a lineup anyway. So I'm glad you did, right? And the fact that Clapper's there.
The only reason I did, I spent too much time following the Still Dossier story back in the day.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'm glad that you recognized who he was, because I mean, this goes back to one of the things we made. Actually, I was able to, Randy, remember the episode we did on why hasn't Bob Lazar been Epsteined over on Jason McLean Questions Everything? It wasn't, that was before my channel was a thing. I've got it. It's being replayed tomorrow, because I think that ties into what you're talking about. Bob Lazar, whether or not he is being honest, or if he's being an asset, right? Regardless of what it is, he has been saying what these people once said for a long time. Like, let's take his intentions out of it. He's clearly been saying what they once said. Because think about it. Everyone's like, oh no, if Bob was, no, he's got, no. David Grush himself said people that essentially has claimed that the military has killed and intelligence agencies have injured or killed American citizens to keep this secret.
And he said, didn't he say he and his wife had even seen some he was very, he was kind of very shielded about how he knew UAPs had damaged people or hurt people or something. And he couldn't say what, but he said he and his wife had seen something personally, and he had to be, and I'm thinking, what have you and your wife seen where somebody's been like, this sounds like something out of the X-Files. Are you and your wife running around like Mulder and Scully and seeing like I didn't even know what he was talking about. It was so weird. I don't know if he's done other interviews where he's mentioned it and I was meant to know, but I certainly had no idea what he was talking about when he said he and his wife had seen horrible things. I'm like, what am I listening to here? And no follow-up questions. If I was one of those congressmen, I would have said, you can't say, but were you and your wife in a situation where you were imperiled as well or something? Like, it was just the weirdest thing.
No, it was. And the fact that no one followed up, again, I found that a little sketchy, which goes back to the whole skiff thing, which we can talk about here in a second. But my point is, if Grush is being honest, that's a whole other conversation. We know for a fact that the intelligence agencies will kill reporters that are that will report on things like cocaine being smuggled in, crack being smuggled into the country with Iran-Contra. We know that they'll do that. You're telling me the CIA or the DOD looking at someone like Lazar, who is supposedly revealing their deepest and darkest secrets during the Cold War, by the way, that he wasn't going to end up 6 feet under somehow, right? That he wasn't suicided by shooting himself in the back of the head twice, right, without a gun, and that would have just happened. The fact that he's been alive all this time, and again being pushed by Knapp and Corbell and others, should be indicative of saying, hey, he's at the very least telling people what the military industrial complex wants out there. That's just it, right?
And when you've got those guys sitting with McCulloch and Clapper, the ex-head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and his the essentially, or one of his second in commands, an inspector general under him, it's like, what on earth is this? I mean, I'm serious. This is when you've got Lazar's two main proponents being sitting with essentially between two of the most high-ranking intelligence operatives under Obama, people who we've talked about, or at least one of them being involved in certainly shady dealings, right? You've got to wonder what on earth is going on. Like,
well,
this isn't what I think everybody wants to. I think the popular thing is, oh, a whistleblower's come out and he's telling the truth, or that's what we're meant to believe, and that's what a lot of the UFO community probably do believe. But when the whistleblower has behind him these people who are clearly in his corner, you're not some weird rogue whistleblower when you've got like literally a director of national intelligence from just, essentially an administration or so ago sitting behind you. And one of his main employees seems to be your lawyer and was your lawyer. And I'm guessing maybe he still is if he's sitting immediately behind you. Like, what? I mean, this is much more complicated than this, truth teller coming out. I mean, my idea of a whistleblower is somebody who's imperiled and in the lower ranks and comes forward, not somebody who drafted, as we've talked about before, the whistleblower language, which let him be a whistleblower. And then is accompanied with these high-end intelligence chiefs from the past. It's just weird.
Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Kay Kulo, who is a new YouTube member. Welcome aboard. We appreciate you being here, man. We really do. No, 100%, right? I mean, this is, again, like you said, this is a much more complicated image than I think people want. I do want to push back on one thing you said, right? I think you meant it more colloquially, but I kind of want to push back on it. You said, he's talking about aliens and extraterrestrials, and he never really said that.
No, he never said. In fact, he said the exact opposite. He said,
right.
I mean, when
off-Earth technology,
very good point,
and non-human biologics.
Very good point.
Anyone can say, any good lawyer will say, he didn't say anything about aliens.
No, in fact, he specifically said against it. When people said ETs, he specifically said, I prefer the term non-human. And that could be more complicated, like I think you and I both suspect that it is. But it also could be just, let's be more sane as we push this and not use words which seem, let's look like we're really being sensible. Because the claims are just as crazy anyway, really. Whether it's extraterrestrials or whether it's some other non-human advanced intelligence, biologic, or whatever his terminology was, and crashed non-human vehicles, like all of this stuff is literally X-Files level. Somebody I saw commented a minute ago how they love the X-Files. It's true. This is like if X-Files ever got to Congress and had
this is what it would be.
This would be what this is it.
But I think there's one other thing here. Again, going back to the idea of this being disinformation. Again, I'm sorry, I'm a cynic here. I think a lot of this is disinformation. Take Grush's intentions out of it. Everything Grush was talking about was secondhand knowledge anyway, right? And this is one of those things that we do see popping up over and over again. Is it's all secondhand knowledge. When he talks about biologics, and again, he hasn't lied because of the language he used. If it turns out we're talking about technology that was designed, that they were experimenting on, like us or even China or Russia were experimenting on, or had some sort of experimental vehicle that they had sent up with a monkey in it or a dog in it or something else just to test out, make certain radiation like we did in the past. That is literally what could all be that they could be talking about, right? And Brian's right there with me. And legally, he will not have lied. Everyone's like, but you said aliens. He never once said anything about aliens. But he could still use it. He could still use that story to perpetuate what everyone thinks is being said. That's how a lot of this stuff works. So again, that's why the weasel words. And maybe he's not doing that. Maybe it's because we're dealing with things like the Greys or some sort of biological robots that have been manufactured by some other intelligence, right? Which I think that's a real possibility. I think there's a physical component. We're both on the idea that there's stuff that's beyond that, but maybe there is a physical component to a lot of these things. Maybe there are gray biological robots, right? Running around operating truly exotic craft. Sure, great. And maybe that is what he's referring to. And that's why he's using the language he is. I'm just saying, let's not get any carts before the horse. And let's not assume that this is all on the up and up. In fact, The fact that, again, going back to the people who are sitting behind him should be your number one clue. This is not on the up and up. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say that Corbell and Knapp are agents or that they have anything or any ulterior motives at all other than the truth, right? But as we've known and as we've been talking about on the show for a while now, the military intelligence apparatus, in many cases, sometimes even the unofficial government, we were talking about a sort of, conflicting with the official government now, they have actively manipulated the UFO community for decades to create this illusion that they've wanted out there for a while. And one of the questions is, why do they want it? And I'm going to say it this way because this is the most cynical sentence I think I've ever said in my life, but I think it's one of the other things at the core of this. Because Marquise actually asked us on when you and me were all in my show. Marquise said, "Well, why do they? If this is all about prepping and all this, why are they pushing why is Grush pushing this idea that these UFOs are dangerous? Why are people saying that these things are dangerous? Because we're running out of kids to bomb. The military-industrial complex, in order to finance itself, has to bomb people, has to blow up things. We're kind of running out of people that we can blow up with impunity. And so what they need is another threat, something that would require trillions and trillions of dollars to fight. And maybe this is even why the interdimensional thing is becoming big again, is because we need much more exotic weapons, which is going to take $1 trillion more to develop, right? We've talked about on this show. Again, I have to write things down because I forget people's names. Dr. Carol Rosen, right? Or Rosen. She, Werner von Braun allegedly told her that he was aware that the organized plan was, first, we're going to have to weaponize space to face the Russians. Then it was going to be asteroids or rogue states, rogue nations. Then it was going to be asteroids. She sort of says satellites. That was sort of the newer version, was instead of asteroids, it was going to be satellites. And then it was going to be aliens. Aliens were going to be the ultimate reason why we had to weaponize space and fund this military industrial complex. For that was to create fear, and that an extraterrestrial threat was going to be the reason why this needed to be funded. She made that claim all the way back in 2000.
Yeah, and as Ed Schultz just pointed out, that's a popular idea in sci-fi tropes as well, like Architects of Fear and The Outer Limits, the Watchmen comic book, not the movie, but it's the idea, the report from Iron Mountain, which is kind of a hoax but a conspiracy document, the idea that we might present an extraterrestrial threat to bring the planet together. In fact, it's a point that Stephen Greer makes repeatedly as well. In many ways, although you end up in different places, you and Greer and myself as well end up in a different place. But the idea that the ETs have to be presented as hostile to keep rolling funds into the military industrial complex, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it was certainly one of the takeaways. If you were taking Grush's testimony seriously, you would have walked away thinking, this sounds pretty diabolical. We better start pumping some more money into Star Wars or the Space Force or whoever's responsible for fighting these people.
Yes. No, exactly. Like I said, when it was, again, Moskowitz kept talking about unsanctioned weapons development. Well, if they come out and say, look, we're sorry, right here, I'm not saying this is going to happen. This is not a prediction, but I would not be surprised if the next thing that happens over the next 2 years, maybe even this year, somebody comes out and says, look, we're sorry. Yes, we've misappropriated, or we didn't misappropriate funds. We did take these funds, like Grush talked about,
from the ETs.
Right. Exactly. Because we've already had congressmen come out and say, look, from what I've seen, we can't fight these things. And they come out and say, look, here we have these super secret squirrel projects. And we've been hiding them because we don't want these other interdimensional creatures to find out that because we've seen them shut down our nukes. We've seen them redirect weaponry. Our current weapons are clearly incapable of fighting them. We've been developing these super secret particle beam weapons and particle things. And we think we can, we've been doing this because they are clear and present danger. And it's They're everywhere, right? So it's, again, at a certain point, I think we're running out of kids to bomb, and they need to be able to, we've got to monitor everyone, because you don't know when you could be taken over by one of these things, or we need to be able to monitor where these things are going and how they're abducting. I guarantee you this is how they're going to spin it. We need more access to your data, because we need to know if these things are coming. We need to up our surveillance. We need to spend more money to build new, better weaponry to shoot these interdimensional creatures, right? Again, it's not a prediction. I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying, if I was writing this script, that's where I would take it.
No, listen, I think a lot of that could be dead on the money. I certainly do think the idea that you could spin this to be, we've been covering things up. Look, we have a whistleblower. Oh, look, he's let us know how dangerous things is. Oh, yes, we've actually needed to take all that money because we're building this craft to fight the ETs. And in many ways, again, that's what Greer's been saying. That's the part of Greer's message that I actually kind of agree with. I disagree with a lot of it. But there was a couple of things I'd just like to hit quickly before we move on. And one is,
please,
that in many ways, this was a day of vindication for the UFO community. Like Tim Burchett, the Republican from Tennessee, God bless him. I liked him. He seems like a really decent human being, but he's so clearly a believer in this. Like, he's talking about reading Frank Edwards' Flying Saucers Serious Business back in the 60s, which was a best-selling book in the 60s, and how that influenced him and how it made him think this was one of the main issues on the planet. And then he gives a little pimp to Accidental Truth, the film that I world premiered at Midwest Weird Fest this year, the new documentary from MUFON. He talked about Accidental Truth. He reads Jeremy Corbell's and George Knapp's statements into the record, which is essentially what most people in the kind of UFO community believe about cover-ups, and we've got to get to the bottom of this and everything else. So, I mean, I like the man. I really do. I think, and I love how he's, what's the term? You're a Southerner or a Texan. It's like dag nabbit, or there's some term he uses, which like gang damn it or something. It's just so funny. It's so kind of home-baked.
It's probably dag nabbit.
You know who I think just quickly the hero was of the thing though? And that was the Missouri, the Missouri Republican Eric Burlinson. He's this new guy, only been there 6 months. He was the person asking the questions I would have asked. Like, he's asking Grush, if these people are coming from Lord knows where, how are they crashing these crafts left and right? Surely there's more competency in that. And then Grush goes into, well, even we have plane crashes and car crashes. And come on, Grush. I mean, I'm not buying that for a second. And he's the one who asks Grush all the great questions. He also asks him, what were the other questions? I actually listed them down here because I like them. I like some of them so much. In fact, this was the best question of the whole thing. This was the question, I think. Could one agency be recovering another agency's stuff and not know it was made by that agency?
Yes.
What a great question. And
It's
Grush is like, question. I'm never aware of that happening. And I'm thinking, Roswell, maybe that could have been what happened when you get your little lieutenant driving out and finding wreckage. And then it's really some paperclip program over here. And you got to be very careful. I'm sure that's what's happened. Like, that's my,
exactly.
So his questions were dead on. His questions was like, he knew the material and was asking the same things we talk about on this show every second time we talk about any UFO crash or the like. And I was like, man, you're a switched on guy.
Yeah. No, yes. Well, so here's the thing. I was thinking the same thing, but I was rolling that more into this is the official versus unofficial government narrative clash that's really happening in that. But I'm glad that you called that, because you're 100% correct. And this goes back to the things that we've been talking about here, which is, hey, this doesn't really look like this looks like we're being manipulated, and because we know that we are, and that this is actually hiding black projects, and probably developed for paperclip and some truly despicable things that our government has been doing. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Those were great questions. And you're right. He was asking the questions we would have asked in that, but someone pointed out how often, how many of those questions was the answer? I can't tell you unless we're in a skiff. Again, super cynical, because I do think a lot of these people are legit. Like, again, I think Gates is, and AOC, surprisingly in this case, and the congressman you were discussing, I think they were asking legitimate questions. I think they are genuinely sort of at least motivated by, again, I'm not going to say altruistic means, but I think at least their own power, right? I'm not saying that these people don't suck. I genuinely assume if you're in Congress, you suck, but they're supposed to covet their power that's been taken by this unofficial government, and they're fighting back. That's what I think is but you're right. Again, super cynical thought. Maybe they get in the skiff, they pop some champagne, they're like, ha ha ha, they bought it.
Or it's
right?
a trap for all of them, just to push along this agenda you were talking. Who's the attractive Republican? I think her name's Mace or something. I'm not that familiar with her. She was.
I'm terrible with names. I know you're. I think it's Mace. I think you're right.
I mean, I'm sure she seems sincere as well, but what's lacking, I think, in a lot of the backgrounds of the people asking the questions, with the exception of Burnson, who seem to be super switched on, is a lack of understanding of the history of this. Like Mace did this little speech, and she's like, ever since the Roswell crash in 1947, the UFO people have been, the US public have been suspicious of the government covering up things. And I'm thinking, anybody who's a real UFO historian will tell you that nobody paid any attention to Roswell after 1947 until almost 1980. So the US public weren't thinking that whole period, Roswell, everybody forgot about it. But the problem is, if you go to Wikipedia or you pick up, some idiot's guide to ufology, you're probably going to get the Roswell story. So unfortunately, I think a lot of the people in government positions who are able to get there and ask the questions without having a thorough knowledge of the history of ufology and a history of the phenomenon, they're not going to be able to ask the right questions. I suspect Burleson from Missouri, and it's the show me state, so it makes total sense that he was the person asking these questions.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Super switched on, or he's actually done research outside of the traditional nuts and bolts UFOs are from outer space kind of realm. Like he might have read a book by Greg Bishop, or he might have, picked up something by Valet or Keelback. I don't know. My point is his questions were outside of the spectrum of mainstream UFO belief. Well, I think most of the other people asking questions, even whether they believed or not, they were trapped in this UFO history, which starts with Roswell and speeds up to Tic Tac, but that's not the way that it happened. And it was interesting to see somebody who had escaped the obvious questions and was asking questions outside of that space.
Well, I would say it's not even the obvious questions, the questions that honestly, again, being super cynical here, the deep state want asked. Right, that these people pushing this agenda want asked, because those are the questions that they can control. To your point, as we've talked about before, the people who reintroduced Roswell into public consciousness in 1980, there's good reason. And I won't use any names for any at this exact moment, because of what I'm about to say. There's really good reason to suspect that they were assets of the government intelligence apparatus. One claimed to be. But he went back and said, he's like, but I was doing it to get real information from them. That was his cover, right? But the simple fact of the matter is, no. I mean, Roswell was reintroduced at the same time. Again, Richard Doty's running around. He's manipulating people, the UFO community.
His main asset, William Moore, writes the original book on Roswell, the book which broke the story. And William Moore himself admits in 1989 he's an AFOSI asset, spreading disinformation and harvesting information from the UFO community. But we still take the stuff that Moore injected into the UFO community's belief system. So many people in the UFO community still believe that, even though Moore himself said, well, I was, Now, he didn't say Roswell didn't happen. He didn't say none of this is true. But what he did say is we were poisoning the well, and we were, we were taking information out. So who knows?
So, yeah. Anyway, again, it goes back to a lot. Like you said, it's the only guy who was asking real questions. Everyone else was kind of asking the questions that the people who are pushing this agenda want asked. And I think that's also kind of telling, right? Again, I'm not saying I trust Gates. I'm not saying I trust any of these people. I don't trust them at all. But they just, again, I think we're seeing the real clash here for me is official versus unofficial government. And that may be part of the plan too. Who knows?
And
But
just quickly, how do you fight it? Because our leaders aren't immune from the beliefs of the society.
oh,
So
absolutely not. Yeah.
Burchett seems sincere. I think he's probably a decent human being, right? But
Yeah.
he was reading UFO
Mhm.
books back in the 60s. He's obviously
Yep.
seen accidental truth. He obviously thinks highly enough of Corbell and Knapp
Mhm.
to read their statements into the record. Somebody's
Yep.
arranged for them to sit front and center. So the impression you got listening to Burchett was he's a believer. You know, he believes in this stuff. And so, and there's nothing wrong with that because 50% plus of the American public probably believe this stuff. But the thing is, if these are the lawmakers who are going to get to the bottom of everything,
Yeah.
how can we rely on them to get to the bottom of it if they've been so contaminated by the belief system anyway?
Yep. No,
I missed
100%.
Donnie's point. I was too busy ranting. I'll
Oh,
have to have a look
he
at it.
said, I, for one, do not trust Jeremy Corbell. The man is too well groomed. Never trust a man who is too well groomed. 100%, Donnie.
Corbell's a good
Brian.
filmmaker, though. He's a very
Yeah.
talented filmmaker.
Oh, he is. Brian Doty worked for OSI. At least officially that we know of. Who knows?
Well, no,
what else he
there's
worked
no
for.
doubt he was like
Yeah.
that isn't even disputed in the historical record. Like we know.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying that, but we don't know if he maybe had some other connections.
Who
You know,
knows?
how that all. Yeah. Anyway, we promised you the video, and I have a little extra something with that because last week we were talking about, you know, where did all of the reptilian videos go, right? And recently, the last couple weeks, we've had a woman. It happened here in Dallas, right? Woman freaks out. So I went and found the original video. This is from the original video, the original TikTok account. The dude who actually recorded this on the plane. And one of the things I want to talk about, just real quick, while we play it, and we'll describe it for those who are listening. There is an argument that has come out that this whole thing is staged, that she is not, because we talked about last week how we thought this was a legitimate woman who had a legitimate encounter and she was legitimately freaking out. Others, however, have stated they believe that she's actually the liar here, that this whole thing is staged. So I'm going to press play and I will describe what's happening. So she's been screaming and she is now storming down the airplane aisle, right? And this guy is staying right on her. She passes through, but then comes right back, right? I'm going to pause it right here for just a second. One of the arguments made is it's like she's hit the stage point, right? She's, because this is the first video out. There have been other videos that came out, but this is the first video that comes out. The guy only has like 10 videos on there. It's a recently opened account. And it's like she is perfectly framed by a cinematographer. And you notice as she talks, she uses what's called the down stage arm to gesticulate, which is her left arm. So she's, she's not blocking her face or her body at all with her gesticulations. It is all clearly seen from this staging, right? And so the argument is that the gentleman who recorded this and her are in on it, and that this is where things get a little weird. She's actually wearing a hyper realistic mask, and that she is an actress who is having this this quote unquote freak out, and that the cameraman is also in on this, and that this is staged to have this very convincing video. The evidence that is then thrown out for this is that if you watch people notice that there's this thing that appears around her neck. I got a couple of screenshots and enlarged the best version of it. There appears to be a line around her neck, just above the neckline of her tank top, right? And it seems to appear and disappear during the video. This is the clearest image you can get on this frame. This is as good as it gets. I've enlarged it. My assumption on this is I kind of think that it's just a necklace, like just a thin gold chain. However, it does look like there's a different skin tone underneath, right where that line is. It looks like it's a little bit lighter than above. I asked my wife. She said it could be like some of these tank tops right now. If they have like sort of a built-in bra, they have an under thing. And that's what we could be seeing, like as she's moving around, which we're actually seeing is like the under tank sort of popping up and creating that difference, or could just be a tan line, and what we're that's just a necklace that's very, very thin in gold. And the thing about gold, particularly in a low resolution video without great light, it won't, if it doesn't shine, it'll turn dark, right? I've seen that happen all the time. So it's nothing conclusive, but the argument is this: she's actually wearing a hyper realistic mask. That she didn't encounter anything. She's actually the fake out, and that this is some sort of distraction that the guy who took the video is in on it. I'm not making that claim, but that's a claim that we've run across, which is what we wanted to, because we mentioned it last week. Want to throw that out there. So I'll rerun the video one last time, just so now that everyone can sort of have that in their heads. So she freaks out. She's making a scene. She's storming. Oh, missed my mark. Turns around, goes back to the mark. She is perfectly framed, and she uses the downstage arm in order to gesticulate. What you have is a really great video. She makes her point and then disappears off frame, and that's the end of the story, right? For me, that argument's a little weak, because she's clearly using her left hand as she storms down the plane. So she never stops. It's not like she stops gesticulating with her dominant hand to use the down stage arm. And she was just honestly genuinely very convincing.
I would just say pro bono, like who benefits from this if it's a fake?
That is the question, right? That's legitimately the question. And I tend to think whenever you have something like, again, this goes back to the wipe, right? Ivan T. Sanderson's The Wipe. You have an event, it's taken seriously, then someone shows up later and then wipes it away. Like, oh, she was drunk. That's what everyone said. Oh, she was drunk. I'm sorry. I'm not a frequent flyer, but I've never watched anyone getting on my plane well enough, unless they're making an absolute jackass of themselves before we load on the plane. I've never paid enough attention to people to know if they were drinking or not. And all these people magically, oh yeah, she was drinking before she got on board. Or she must have had some sort of a psychotic moment. As we discussed on last week's show, this woman does not appear inebriated. I've known people who've had episodes. She does not appear to be having an episode. I don't know what happened here, but I think people it's like, I feel like this is a legitimate thing. The argument that it's not a legitimate thing falls flat to me. It feels like someone's looking for something for clicks. I can't say what she encountered. I just think this is a legitimate event.
Yeah, I would think if it was staged for, I know you're not saying that, but if it was staged just for views or something, there'd be too much of a repercussion for the woman who did it to get dragged off by, airport security and banned from flying for the rest of her life or something. And she, to the point of her being psychotic or drunk, she looks pretty well put together. She looks like a very middle class, white bread, normal woman who has maybe gone a little bit Karen over something, like something's really triggered her, but she doesn't seem to be somebody who's, you'd look at and go, that woman is drunk or that woman's having an episode. It just looks like this woman's, like, if she was screaming about, if she was making that point about something else, if it wasn't about that person's not real, if she was just as angry about something else, I don't think anybody would be saying she seems to be losing her mind. It's just the verbiage sounds crazy, but it just seems like a woman who's upset and angry and doesn't seem insane to me. But
yeah, no, you can hear her voice. She's about to cry. Like, this is not she's not just angry or throwing a fit. She's genuinely freaked out. Now, again, I can't say it's not faked.
I would add, a good actress could do that as well. Like, a good actress could present really insanely and upset. Even a decent actress. Like, I've dated actresses and I've had lots of friends in the acting community. I know a bunch of people who could do that on cue and seem legitimate. So that's possible, but I don't think the drunken thing and I don't think the psychotic thing holds up.
Mhm.
But then why would somebody act it if that's a legit, unless it's a sound stage somewhere and nobody was actually on a plane? Who knows these days, right? I don't think
Mhm.
anybody would jeopardize their ability to be able to maybe fly ever again,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, ever again. Yeah, I mean, because she was arrested, right? Right after this, she was taken off the plane. She was arrested. Again, if it's like you said, if she's the fake, if this cameraman's the fake, and again, I've looked as near as I can tell, it is like his account's legitimate. It's newer, but still a legitimate account. She supposedly responded, but her stuff got taken offline, right? So I just feel like this was a legitimate event. Now the question is, what did she see? What freaked her out? I can't say she saw something unusual. I can't say she didn't have some sort of an event. I'm just saying the preponderance of evidence at least allows me to think that she encountered something that freaked her out. Whether she misunderstood the situation, whether, I can't say. But I do think the people who are saying that she's wearing a prosthetic mask and she's fake, I think that's looking to things a little too hard, because I'm sorry, that's the best image you're ever going to see of that situation. Trust me, I've found that's the original video. I've taken the clearest shots of it. You can't just say that it's not a very thin gold necklace that keeps moving and disappearing, because it does. If it was a prosthetic, it would be, you would have that consistent line the entire time, but it doesn't do that. It just behaves more like a necklace would. So again, there you have it. I'm not saying what happened because I wasn't there and I don't know her. There's not enough information, but now you have both sides of the story. Her side is she saw something that one of the people on that plane was not a real person, and she believed it. And then other people are saying that she's the fake person and that this whole thing was staged in some sort of controlled opposition kind of a thing, or disinformation kind of a thing. The question becomes, if it is controlled, some sort of controlled planned leak thing or disinformation, why?
I'd love to have her on Talking Weird on Mysterious Library. Not that she's
I'm literally trying to
I'd get her on in a second.
I'm trying. No, so here's the thing, right? There were several tweets from someone claiming to be her. They've all been taken down. She said, look, no, I'm trying to reach out to somebody, but no one will listen to me. I found another account that looks to be her, but she hasn't posted anything. I'm trying to get a hold of her because she's local Dallas.
Oh, wow.
I'm trying to get a hold of her and say, hey,
if she was local central
talk.
Wisconsin, I'd be taking her out to dinner and seeing what she could tell me.
I'll let her know that you're looking. Dean.
Please do.
Yeah. So there you have it. That's for y'all to decide. Is she legit, or is she some super secret CIA actress? And if so, what's the plan here? Why would they go through that?
Just if she's listening, I'll still take you out to dinner, even if you're like some Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, no, Dean would. Yeah, no, please.
Killer.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, he's cool. Yeah. Whether it's legit or not, you don't have to have seen a shapeshifter for Dean to be interested in you. Just saying.
As long as you're not a shapeshifter, I won't go there. Just saying.
Okay, so that's his one thing. No shapeshifters.
I have some standards.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Guys, thank you for listening. I think the main takeaways for us, for Dean on the UAP thing is, hey, there seems to be more going on because particularly when you look at who's behind the witnesses, there's an undercurrent, there's an under message. For me, I think it's clear that we're seeing a conflict between the official government and the unofficial government, and that we maybe are being set up for the next great never-ending conflict to fund the military-industrial complex. But what were y'all's takeaways? Throw them in the comments below. Let us know. Is there what else is going on out there with y'all? What do y'all think about the video? Do you believe, if you're watching, if you're not watching live, you're watching a replay, throw it in the comments. Let us know what you think. We'd love to know. For Dean and Doug and everyone over here at Untold Radio Network, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all, and we'll catch y'all next time behind the card catalog.